Well, hello, listeners. Don Early here. Thank you for tuning into the very first episode of The Early Effect. Today, Jeremy and I are talking about our experiences as filmmakers and artists. It is also an episode where we are learning exactly how to do this podcast thing, and did not discover that our mic settings were not quite right until after we stopped recording. Oops. So please enjoy, give us a little slack, and join us as we discover what the early effect really is. Now, episode 1, Filmmaking.
Hi, Don.
Hey, Jeremy. So, welcome to the early effect. I am Don Early.
I'm Jeremy Spray.
And we are discovering what this is all about. And today we are going to talk about filmmaking and being an artist. And I think it's on my mind because I've just struggled to express myself as an artist during the pandemic,
Yeah.
with all the
I would
isolation.
argue a little bit before that, probably. You struggled earlier, and you were finally getting to the point where you could figure out what was it going to allow you to express that, and the pandemic slammed that shut, just kind of closed that door.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Because, in my trying to think about what it is that gives me energy, that makes me feel like me, if that makes sense. Like when you're doing it, you just feel more of yourself. You feel more at who you are. The last thing that I remember where I really felt like that was when I was filming the Cleanup Crew, Demon Hunters, the Cleanup Crew sketch. And it was a full set. It's kind of like what you see in the back here, and it was just, I think what I liked is that I was the guiding creative principle, of the overall, like what this is going to be.
Yeah.
And I liked sort of corralling all the different departments and being like the one that kind of pulls it together, and so that's really difficult, not just in a pandemic, but like any other time, because it's so collaborative and it's so team. And I think, like, I know I've just been pining for some kind of way to, perform or do something creative by myself, or, maybe with one other person or something. So, it's been a struggle, filmmaking wise. I don't know. What about you?
Yeah. So filmmaking for me was one of those things that I kind of fell into, only because I started off recognizing that I loved having an audience. I loved performing. And the more I was doing it, my first like full-on paid acting gig was when I was in Casa Bonita. So my audience was rotating all the time. I was a stunt actor. I was an indoor cliff diver. And I was doing the theater gig, right? Like I had 7 shows a day. I had every 15 minutes. I knew what the shows were. I knew when they were. It was all the same thing, the same thing, the same thing, the same thing. And that was one of those things that so many people that I worked with started washing out for, or they would just not really get into their characters as much, because rather than they're sketches, right? They're not real characters. It's a 3-minute sketch, and eventually someone gets a pie in the face or ends up in the water. Like it's not a big deal. It's kids entertainment.
Yeah.
So it would just cause a lot of burnout for it. And for me, I really kind of took to it. I was like, this is something I can just keep doing. And I remember going to my parents and I'm like, I'm going to do this forever. And they're like, yeah, find a backup. And so I started, looking at other side jobs, of course, doing the same thing. And I eventually got into film study. I found a class about working in film, and I was huge. I was way too big, way too commercial, way too theatrical, way too carried in my voice. And not until I actually lost my job, I was fired from the bank that I was working in while doing acting, did I start kind of seeing what the other options would be. And my acting coach at the time also ran a casting company, or was one of the owners of it. And so just to make ends meet, he brought me on so I could start helping him with casting. And so I was kind of behind the camera for the first time and watching all of these other actors, all these crazy big personalities, or someone who's super nervous about just getting this stupid little gig show up. And I was able to kind of see it from a different perspective and go, oh, wow, that's really not necessary to stress that much over it. But through the acting gig, I got a production job. I was casting a show called Super Nanny. And then they needed a PA.
That's how you got on there.
That's how I got on Super Nanny. I was one of the original casting crew when they started shooting season 1. And then when they showed up and we started shooting in Colorado, they called my guy back and said, hey, we need local PAs. We need a production assistant out here. Do you have anybody? And he's like, I got this guy who just worked on a Fat Tire commercial for the very first time. They loved him. He's not doing anything. And he called me. He's like, hey, do you want this? And I was like, sure. And then they brought me on. I was supposed to do 1 episode with them. I ended up doing 3 because they kept carrying me to show after show. And then they brought me to Los Angeles. It was the work ethic that I put into the set and just running around because like I literally had nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And I already had a drive for what was going on, what the industry was. It kind of carried me on through it. So that's when I got into it. And so my film industry start was shitty student films at art schools in Colorado, and then going into reality television and independent film after that. So I didn't even perform again for almost 9 years. It was about 8 years because I did a gig for Matt Vancel after meeting you guys in Los Angeles. He did his Earth Force 5.
That's right.
And that was the first time I was like, I could act. And they're like, you're a grip. I'm like, no, resume. And kind of got back into it from there. But I mean, not trying to go over my freaking biography or my CV. What I was saying is the process for what it is for me almost always was a job. It was very little of it was about creating, and very little of it was about art and doing it, other than the fact that I was performing, because that was the piece that I was getting my energy from. Like I was able to give it out. And so when I got into film, I recognized I have no audience. I have a camera. And even if I think I really got that one shot down, like boom, nailed that one, they're like, that's great. Do it again. Another one for safety. And right. So like I started seeing the business side of it come out. And that was different from the art performance that it was. So I started turning it into other things, but I was able to make that decision. I was lucky enough to do that I just was going to continue to make money in the film and television industry. And I did for a full decade.
Yeah.
That's how I kept going.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's an interesting, I think that's how your experience is sort of different than mine. Like we both kind of got started with shitty college films, right?
Sure.
So, I was friends with Matt Vancel and Nathan, and we were gaming in the basement of a dorm and stuff like that. And there was this idea to shoot a film on the weekends or whatever in between classes and stuff. And so Matt wrote a script and continued to write the script as we were filming. He brought on Ben Dobbins to direct it because he was the only guy who seemed to know what he was doing. And so Ben literally did everything. Of course, he directed, he shot, he was he did sound, like in the camcorder and the boom mic, and
wow, he was the filmmaker.
And he did all of it. And so I was just some schmuck friend who was like, yeah, you want to be in a movie? Yeah, sure, I want to be in a movie. Here, you get this character named Silent Jim. He doesn't talk, but he does. And that's funny. I'm like, oh, great. Okay.
It's a lot of lines then.
And then he, and of course, that was around when The Matrix was real big in the movie theaters at the time. The first Matrix, the only one that we ever knew at the time. And so there was, we were, as actors, we were all responsible for our own costuming, our own, makeup. We had to figure out how to make Matt into a demon. And it was really up to Nathan Rice and I, we just went to some, costume shop or whatever and got some red makeup and cheap ass prosthetics and glued it to his face and spray painted his hair silver. It was just just making shit up as you go. But it was a lot of fun. And, and Ben kind of taught us all, right then and there, like how to do this. And we all were like, okay, we can do this. And turns out we do this rather well together. Like this group works. And so Ben, as was par for a long time, worked himself into the hospital, literally. He works so hard that it compromises his health, and he pushes beyond that, and eventually it becomes too much. So he was burnt out, and I went to Scotland for a semester. And during that, Matt said, "Hey, I'm writing a script." So by the way, of course, Matt was a writer, and in college he didn't write scripts. Obviously, he wrote stories, and he was in the classics department. He knew all the stories. So he and I also were in the classics department, classics program, and he knew all the stories. I was really good at the language. I was really good at picking up the grammar. It was almost like a code, so Greek and Latin, but I would translate it exactly word for word into what it is correct grammatically, and I have no idea what it said, because it's just a code to me. I just I broke the code, that's it, but I don't have any concept of, from a story standpoint, what the hell is going on. And Matt knows all the stories, and so he would just fudge it, and if he got the grammar close enough, great. And it would drive me crazy because I'm like, no, it doesn't do that. And so Matt's always been sort of fast and loose with rules. And if you have seen his films, you'll know what I mean. But we were, for me, I was always, I didn't know it, but I took for granted having a great writer, like as a resource, as like the source of our material, right? So Matt emails me and says, "Hey, you're going to direct the next movie." I'm like, "What?" I'm an actor. He's like, "Yeah, you've done the TV thing before." I had worked for television services at college, and I'd hammed it up in front of a camcorder before, and so I knew a little bit about how to do it. But he's like, "Yeah, just let me send you the script and tell me what you think." And so I got ideas, and like, yeah, okay, I think I could do this. So right out of the gate, I'm directing a feature film with zero experience.
Wow.
And the one thing that I brought to it was I'm not Ben. I cannot do what he did. So I need to bring on people who know how to do the things I don't know how to do.
That's really smart leadership.
And the first thing I did was I got Ben to be my cameraman.
Ha! Out of the hospital from that
yeah,
point.
he was finally out of the hospital, and so Ben was thrilled because he could just focus on one thing, right? And he and I just worked really well together. We got the vision together, and so I knew how it was going to play out and what we needed to do and what kind of shot, we were looking for and stuff. Got Phil Price. We got a mini disc recorder
nice
to do our sound. that was our external sound. And so, unfortunately we didn't have a second sound guy. So, and we were working like 20 hours a day.
Yep. Sounds right.
For 7 days or whatever. And so Phil was worked to the bone,
right?
Catching naps in between takes as much as he could. He brought these turbo truffles to the set, and they were just these little chocolate mints that were hyper caffeinated.
Oh my gosh.
The whole cast and crew were fucking high on turbo truffles all day long. But it was fun, and it got us through, and we filmed something like 64 hours of footage in 6 days or whatever.
Good Lord.
And I mean, just we learned by doing it, mistakes and all. And then it took another, I want to say 4 years before it made it to DVD. But I mean, we did a VHS release of the initial cut, and it was something like 3 hours long.
Oh my God, that's a long VHS.
And yeah, so we learned Matt writes talkie scripts.
Yep.
And so,
like you said, he likes stories, so he knows the dialogue.
And it took him a while to learn that less is more, and you can communicate visually and that sort of thing. But
yeah,
he got there. But how else are you going to convey the information when you're young and whatnot? But the one thing I learned, very much like you, I loved having an audience. I loved being the center of attention. So directing worked very well for me, and acting was great because I was part of this scene and I was a character and I could do that. It sucked doing both at the same time.
I imagine. Yeah.
I hate doing that because I can't see myself. I'm not, and particularly at that point, I was not a self-aware enough actor to know how I looked as I was doing it.
Sure.
I mean, that most people don't, I
imagine you're pulled out of the scene already, like can't even be fully acting because you're thinking about what's the look like, what are we getting, is someone going to get their cue? You're still trying to direct while you're trying to act. That's brutal.
But also I also relied on Ben a lot too. I have to ask him, how was that? Or do we have everything? How's our blocking? Because I can't see it. So he was kind of my second eyes, and and that's kind of what I learned as a filmmaker. Again, as I move forward, better or worse, I really enjoy, and we're going to use that as a present tense, I enjoy maybe being the one that comes up with the idea, or take someone's idea that I'm really inspired by and make it a reality, and make it a reality the way I see it, and what I have always liked to do is to inspire other people to want to do it that way as well. And then again, get people who know and love to do the things that I don't know or don't love to do, and bring them on. And we accomplish great things because we're a team, driven by that. But it's made me a bit lazy as a director. I mean, as a few things. So what I've learned is doing that makes me a pretty good producer, but I don't have the time or the capacity, because I have a career, and I always have. I've always had a day job.
Yeah.
And I've always had a well-paying, well, not always, but I've moved into the career sector, so it's financial stability has always been like a priority for me. And whenever I try and go it alone and be self-employed or whatever, like the stress just crushes me.
Yeah.
So I was never willing to have filmmaking be my career.
Was there a reason for that? You think it was just it would take the fun out of it, or there just wasn't enough there?
So initially, that's exactly what it was. This is fun. This is inspiring. This is art. I love doing this. I don't want it to become a job. I don't want it to become work. I want it always to, be fun. And it still can be hard work and, and all that stuff, but it's still just like, we get to do this. This is amazing. So what that decision has cost me is that I never really got to get really good at any one particular thing in the process. So, if I really wanted to be an actor and a performer, I should be diving into that, and looking for every opportunity I can to get in front of an audience or get in front of the camera or something like that, But I've learned that I want to act in projects that I want to be in. And you don't really get that luxury as an actor until you're well established.
Yeah, that's true, right? You get what you audition for, and only if you're right for the role.
Yeah. I mean, and you just got to grind. And I know what that takes. I've watched it. I've conducted it. And I've been through it, but not on a daily basis kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then the other thing with the directing, which I love to do, but I never got really good at the photography aspect of it. I don't know the technical side of photographing in camera and lighting and stuff like that. And really, for a director, you really should have a very good grounding in that. I always relied on hiring an excellent cinematographer or director of photography who could cover all that for me. I could just convey what I wanted it to do and how I wanted it to basically look. They take that and create it according to their inspired vision. And then I worked with the actors and the set designers and, govern that whole vision thing. That's always kind of where I like to do it. But stepping back and looking at that, it's a bit lazy in some ways. If you really want to go at one particular, if I wanted to be a director, I should learn more about directing,
Sure. Right. I mean, another argument could be made, though, that what you consider to be directing may be different than what directing is for others. So, like you just mentioned, hiring a cinematographer, a director of photography, like that's their gig. They are the camera, they are the vision, they're the eyes. Whereas the director is telling the story, right? He's making sure the story is being told the way that it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't. I'm just saying, don't sell yourself short to the idea that if you don't know everything about cameras, doesn't mean you can't be a good director or that you're not committed to it.
Yeah.
It's just a different aspect of it, a different take on it. And I get the idea of being a captain means you should know what the entire ship does. You should know every piece of everything. But even Picard didn't run engineering. He just said,
Right.
Scotty, do this.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I completely confused my Star Wars there. And that was the third time I did it. So just messing it all up.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you go back to what you're saying.
Yeah. And especially when the TARDIS showed up, I mean, it all went to shit at that point. So no, but I mean, we had fun. We did great things. You know, as a filmmaker, I learned that the work that we did actually means something to people. We gained an audience, and our work meant something personally for them. You know, and getting in touch with that side of being an artist was really an eye-opener. Like, wait, what we are creating affects others, and to get the feedback. You know, of course, you know, we did the gamers, and I actually wasn't a part of that when I was in Idaho at the time, but spent obviously the better part of almost 15 years promoting and, you know, doing that film after it was done. But, you know, we created a few films that validated people's experiences and you know, as gamers, and brought sort of, I don't know, a connection that who you are is okay. And, you know, and then got to kind of educate people a little bit about what gaming is, right? I can't tell you how many times people use our films as tutorials for new people in their group of like, okay, watch this. This is what we do.
I was one of them.
Yeah.
That was my introduction to Dungeons and Dragons. I knew of it my entire life, but that was the first time I learned how to be in it, for sure.
So that was cool. That was really cool. But what I found as I've tried to venture on and do other things, that you really need a good script. You need a writer. You need a source of good written material. I'm not a filmmaker. I'm not a creator that can improv something start to finish. And bring that. I mean, that'd be a fun project to try at some point. I mean, they basically kind of did that with Attacking the Darkness. But you know, I don't know. I've always really believed that the project is going to be great if you have a good script. You know, it doesn't have to be the most perfect script or amazing script, you know, but it's got to be good. You got to be able to see, you got to be able to read it and go, I want to see this. I want to do this. I want this to be a thing that's real.
Don, how many sets have you worked on? In whatever capacity, just in general. How many projects and how many sets would you say?
Gosh, well, I mean, 1, 2, I don't know, maybe 10-ish.
Okay. So would you agree with what, here's what I'm getting at. Your stories and your experience of what it was to get started, how you kind of fell into being able to direct and have this really amazing team of people who all stepped up, committed their time, committed their health in some cases, and really were able to make something incredible and special. Do you see that is so rare and like the gift that was that you guys were a part of? Like there's a part of me that's just really just hearing like how incredibly rare this experience is. So even the idea of, like you said, coming from a really good script and a really good background of like, yeah, and you need to have the storytellers around you who can do something with that rather than just lose it.
This, I mean, I would say I'm a pretty good storyteller, but without the script, I'm not a writer, and that's not true. I do write. I am a writer in some way. I'm not a screenwriter. And I it's not a thing that I'm interested in learning either, but I know that if I could, and I could do it, I could produce a quality script, then, then I could do something. I could, write something that I could do, kind of thing. But I don't have that capability. And, that's why I say, unless you're an excellent improv performer who can generate a one-man show or, whatever it is, I think it's really dependent on having a good script, because then you can find the quality filmmakers and creators to bring to that script. But I think, you can have, this has happened with our group. You can have a great script and people who have no idea how to make it happen, and attempt it and fail miserably. And while the rest of us that have worked together before look at that going, how is this not obvious? How can you, but at the same time, then you could take somebody's crap script and produce something interesting. I suppose that's possible. I've never had that experience. I've never had that opportunity. And depending on the kind of project that it is, I think that dialogue and script structure is just so important, and it helps you as a creator, whatever form you take, whether you're lighting or the director, sound, art department. That script informs everything,
So I want to go jump back on that real quick and just kind of take the broader approach. So outside of the specific components of what makes a film, I don't know if I'll say easier to shoot than others or better than, right, based on its particular components. On the broader scope of being an artist, one of the things that you touched on when we started was that it's been really difficult for you to find yourself as an artist and to remember, I guess would be a way of putting it, being a creative because of the pandemic, because of the fact that you did not have your crew, you didn't have a collaborative group. So script or no script is how, let me refigure my question here. How does the art factor come in for you? How does that reconnect to either being film or otherwise with a really good group of people? Is it more about the group of people that you're with? Like you said, there are some who are clueless with a good script as opposed to the ones that you work with who are like, that's so obvious. Is it really about the group of people that you were with, or is it about expressing yourself and the group of people also are expressing themselves and so they get it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Certainly, if you have the group of people that just gel, obviously that's magic, and that is rare. It is rare. I've not necessarily been on a lot of other people's productions. I've experienced it through friends, through other people's professional experiences on other projects. I've been into the movie studios and the monster effect shops and seen what that looks like and what that entails to make that work. And I think that for art, it comes down to, so that in college, my goal was to be a Lutheran pastor.
Right.
Like that was the the direction I was heading from the day I started college. Like I knew that's what I was going to do. And so that's why I went into classical languages, because the whole idea is I'm going to have 4 years of college level Greek and Latin. I'm going to be able to get to seminary and have this language down and blow the doors off of everybody. And I'm going to really understand this material, right?
You're going to be the best pastor they ever had.
The other thing that I liked about the idea of being a pastor is I had a captive audience every week.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I had a captive audience every week. I had something creative that I had to write every week. And I got, and you, and that's just from the performance side. Then you also connect with people on a meaningful level, like as your career, and help them through things. And so when that fell through fate or whatever you want to call it, I mean, I couldn't go to seminary because I had too much student loan debt. Irony there. But I think back on that, and I think about like that create, those elements, right? I have an audience. I am connecting with people meaningfully. And I have a regular commitment to create something, right?
Yeah.
And to perform it, essentially, to share it with other people, and hopefully they benefit from that somehow. Their feedback feeds me. I create, it inspires them, they feedback, it's this loop. And finding that elsewhere just has always been a really big challenge, particularly if it's something that I'm trying to do with as few people as possible. Because the thing about filmmaking, as wonderful and magical as it is, and obviously fraught with its own issues and drama and everything, is and crises, is that it's just a lot of people, and that's a lot of scheduling, and it's a lot of time commitment. And if something falls through, like money is involved, and
Yeah.
it becomes a big deal. It's not like it was in college where everybody was working for the fun of it, and we all lives, right? Families. And
Yeah, I was never in college in film. I was always the guy that was hired and was paid to be there. So like I totally understand that aspect. Like the idea of like, oh, we're here just having fun. Like, no, I'm not. I'm here to pay my phone bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this kind of brings up an interesting point. There's a book that I'm reading at Matt's recommendation called The War of Art. And I'm about 2/3 of the way through it. And so far, I think the through line is really either you're going to be a hobbyist or you're going to be a pro. And hobbyists are never going to amount to much because they won't put in the work.
Sure.
And they'll inspiration is going to evaporate. If you're going to be a pro, you're going to sit down every day. You're going to punch in, and you're going to commit to the process. And I don't know what's left in the last third of the book, but I think what's difficult in the position that I've taken is that I'm not at a place where I can just not have my day job, my career, the thing that I do to make money, because it's great and it's comfortable and it's secure. But that occupies a large chunk of my day.
Sure.
Obviously. And that's, time I can't use to do other creative things. But does that mean I'm a hobbyist? Well, I would argue no, because I think you can still be a pro artist within that context, because it's about how you approach your work. And it's how you, I mean, if you utilize the hours that you have, first of all, you got to make the hours.
Yeah.
And then you got to do the work. And if you're just going to sit around waiting for the motivation or the right project to fall in your lap, you're a hobbyist. But I think if you're a pro, even if you only do one project every 5 years, the way you handle that, the way you approach your work, I think matters. And so maybe the author of this book would disagree with me. Maybe he'd call me a hobbyist. I don't know, but I think that's an important distinction. And so I think that the art is, and the being an artist, I think for me is just, it's an expression of myself. It's something that I'm doing to share with others. And that hopefully creates meaning in some way, and then you get that feedback about that.
Yeah.
So when you're on set, your audience is the crew, your audience is the camera. You're doing the work. Between takes, you're figuring out what it is. And then when it's all done, your audience is the audience. And you go to conventions and you get to hear all the stories about the work that you did on and what that meant to them. I mean, for you have an awesome role in the Journey Quest series. Roles, I should say. You have two amazing roles, which, by the way, Caitlin's favorite role in the entire show so far is the sword.
Nice.
The sword of fighting. She loves it. She didn't even know it was you at first.
Oh, that's great.
But she loves it. She absolutely loves that character. And so tell me, now you've gone to conventions.
Yeah.
What have people said about your your role in that particular project, and what does that project mean? What does Journey Quest mean to that audience?
Yeah. So that I feel a little bit caught off guard by that question, because it's a real interesting take. I do not often think of my audience when I'm performing. Mm-hmm. I will think about how it comes across. I will certainly think about its delivery. And in the terms of comedy, which is where most of my work comes from, I certainly have gone over the science of delivery and making sure that the information gets across and that the voices get out. But afterwards, after it's done, I have a practiced and trained mindset that I put myself into of move on. It's over. Yeah. I did that thing.
Right.
And so when I have gone to Gen Con, for example, or some of the comic conventions and have spoken with fans, that has been a new experience for me, because it's usually just something I let go. I don't think about having fans or interacting.
I think that's probably a normal experience for most actors, is you do that until you go to conventions.
Yeah.
Like, you have to focus on what you're doing at the time. So I think you've always done it, I guess, the right way. But
even when I did some stage performances, I remember coming off of West Side Story, and then there would be the meet the cast at the end of the show, and I was like, oh, this is weird. I've just been performing for these people for 3.5 hours, and now I'm going to go interact with them in person, maybe still in makeup. And I didn't ever feel like there was enough of me or anything that was important enough for me to say. Right. Like I was hiding behind this character, and now you're interacting with me as a person, and it feels a lot more vulnerable suddenly. So to actually answer your question rather than dodge it, it really has been a fun experience to hear from the fans and to hear them connect. Like the fact that Caitlin loves the sword and didn't know that it was even me. Like that's a great thing. I think that's hilarious. Another part would be one time I was signing a poster for somebody, and I signed it with the sword's caption, the Flash, and put it on there. And I said it out loud when I signed it. And someone ran from across the convention hall, almost knocking two people over, and like ran right up to me. Never seen this person in my life. And they're like, "Are you Jeremy Spray?" Like, yes. How do you know that? And they're like, "I just heard you do the sword." And like they recognized, they knew my name from credits and recognized my voice and put the two together. Yeah. That was weird. That was a wild moment.
Yeah, that is a weird moment when that happens. Has that ever happened to you in the wild, like outside of a convention?
No.
No, it hasn't. Role.
Not for it. The roles that I have done have not been well. Okay, that's not true. I was going to say the roles that I've done have not been really widely seen. However, I told you I worked in reality television. I was on Super Nanny for several years, and there were a couple different times I actually ended up being on a show as a fill-in character for some of the families that we were helping out. There was a situation that happened in New Hampshire. It was super cold. It was like November, and this family had a lot of trash in their house. They had 4 kids, and it was cold as F. So like getting stuff out the door was not easy for them to do because the dumpster was far away. And so the producers contacted the neighbors around to say, "Hey, can you help clean up this house?" And no, they could not, because they were also frozen inside in these cold houses. So I became a neighbor. I was a helpful neighbor that came in to help clean up the house and get them ready to go. I had a normal outfit that I wore every day that I was gripping. When I was on set, I wore a red hoodie that was way too beat up. I had my dirty jeans and my big boots and my headset. Obviously, I took off the headset, but I was walking around still this guy in the red hoodie and jeans, and it was, God, it was almost 8 years later. I was working in a call center for a new job, taking care of my son's daycare, just making dollars. And one of the other representatives knew me. She saw my face and she's like, "Oh my God, you were on Super Nanny," and like completely remembered me from this 15 seconds that I was on the show.
Wow.
Because she was a huge fan of the show and just knew my face right away. And so that was kind of impressive. Like that was one of those that I had to remind myself, I guess I can be memorable. Yeah. Even when I don't think so.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's the one time I got caught completely off guard. I have yet to be assaulted as Grelnock. No one recognized me when I'm not in green. And so like, that's the only time they'll ever see me. And the voice of the sword is so affected that I gotta come way down here and then start talking about pubes and the way I'm going to stab that guy in the knee. And if I'm not doing that, then no one's going to hear that one come up.
Yeah. I could see that. Yeah. Yeah. It is weird. I've had one experience that stands out where I had just moved to Bellingham after Demon Hunters 2 had gone out. I just moved to Bellingham the first time, and I was in a grocery store, and this college kid comes up to me and he says, "Are you Silent Jim?" So it's a college film I did 125 miles south on a limited audience that I would imagine no one has seen. And yeah, to be recognized in a grocery store in a town I just moved to was a little off weird.
So on the weird sense of it though, like, you obviously still remember that story. How did you feel afterwards the rest of that day? Coming back to that artist. But so this was one of those acknowledgments that really kind of gave you that energy that you were talking about.
Yeah, I felt amazing. And then later on, I find out that, this town is home to a couple of celebrities and people love spotting that, I don't think I count as a celebrity, but to this guy, he had seen the film and apparently
therefore he got points.
Thought enough to come up. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting vulnerable but also appreciative experience, you know. It's gracious. So yeah, I think I've well dodged around your question or pounded it back and forth, but the whole art thing and the expression and the, it's again, it's just trying to figure out a way, like I say, I feel hamstrung because I can't write a screenplay.
Right.
Therefore I can't create. I'm an idea guy. Like I've always, even my like role-playing games, I struggle, I get the plot. I have an idea of different scenes, maybe. I might have an idea for a particular character. But putting it together and kind of crafting that story, I can never get the through details in the structure to make it make any sense. And I'm always kind of this big picture, like, oh well, we should have this, and right, yeah, oh, you know how to put flesh this out for me. I don't know what I'm doing. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of what I like with Demon Hunters 3. God help all of the people that have been involved in trying to bring this script to fruition, because Jimmy and I have not made it easy. Well, we've had, Matt has written a few drafts. It's, there's a certain way I know how to make it, and that way it didn't work. And then, Carol's writing it. We've had other people take a look at it, and sometimes the particular project or the idea, it's just, how it should be when it's done, and the effect it should have, and where it should be funny and how it should be funny. But I can't make it funny. I can't write it. And I don't know how to communicate how to do that, because that's a skill set I just don't have. That's why I feel like I want to take my idea, my inspiration, hand it off to other creative people to get themselves inspired and create something that they take ownership of. And it, creates the thing.
Yeah.
And that's,
so what if it happened the other way around? I know I'm going to be, this will be my last question, because I know we're running out of time here, but I wanted to check this one with you real quick. If someone does have, say, a script or a really great idea that they've got the beats down, they've got the bullet points down, but they don't know what to do with it.
mm-hmm.
They don't know what to take with it, and they were able to hand that over to you. Would that be everything that you need, or would there be some other piece that you would need to get that artist energy and to get it all up and running?
I mean, it could be everything that I need. It could be. But again, it's one of those where the script has to be good. And and when I say good, it has to be also something that I could see myself doing, and again, like from a professional standpoint, like, if you're going to be a pro director or whatnot, you could or should be able to take the script that is paid for and presented to you, and you can make it a reality. But if I'm not, grabbed by it or anything, then it just, that's a process I'm not interested in. And that's, I think that's the other key, is that I've really been privileged in being able to do that, like I get to choose because I have financial stability. But that also means maybe I'm not quite as good as other people who could do it better. But those people might not want to do it for the parameters that they have, I don't know. It hasn't happened. Let me just put it that way.
Okay.
I have received scripts over the past that are not producible from my standpoint. And I've critiqued others as well. They've asked for that, and I actually do sort of believe, because of my time in LA. So LA, let's talk about Los Angeles real quick.
Okay.
Our experience in Los Angeles, going on the sets, going into the movie theater, or not movie theaters, movie sets, and the movie studios.
It's like these.
Yeah.
Right.
And seeing what it takes to actually make a living at it, like just grunts on the ground doing their thing, talking about set builders and carpenters and, special effects artists that are crafting the molds and stuff.
Yeah.
Grips. Yeah, absolutely. You do a gig for a few weeks or a few months, and then it's gone, and you have to find another gig. Hopefully you can get yourself into a group or a company or something that brings you along to the next thing, but the stress of that, just to see what it really took to go, okay, if you really want to do this professionally, if you want this to be your career and your life's work, this is what it takes. And it's going to take long hours. And I still don't know how you have a family doing it. And so it was a big eye opener. And that's when because up until that point, the goal was always to be, well, I'm doing this day job thing until I can find that opportunity that I can finally just go for it. Right. And that never happens, because that's not how it works.
Right.
You have to stop and create that opportunity yourself and go through all the potential and likely failures that come with that, and the destitution.
Never more true than in the film industry is the phrase, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what it was. There's no such thing as a lucky break. It's 15 years of work and finally getting the opportunity to get lucky.
Yeah.
And get in. I totally get that.
That's right. You don't get discovered. That's not how it works. That is a myth. And so I think coming to that realization and moving forward, that sort of freed myself up, and realizing that, hey, that focus of my life, I can close the door on that and feel good about that. And to go, okay, now I know what being a filmmaker and an artist means to me. Because having the privilege of being able to have a stable family and an income, and having that opportunity, is just more important than trying to do my own thing, sink or swim. And I did that, as you know, for 4 years.
Exactly.
I was self-employed, and, it nearly killed me from stress, just not a thing. So I don't know. I still haven't figured it out. Maybe this is it.
I don't
know.
Figuring it out, I think, is antithetical to the actor's process, right? It's all about experimenting and trying and getting into new things, whether you're a pro or a hobbyist, right? In the level that you're at. So good on you for doing the early effect. I think this is a great start, and let's hope it gives you back that energy that you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I say, if the only person that I interact with because of this is you, I've already gotten it.
Yes. So, I'm an audience.
Yeah. Well, I think we've yammered long enough on this first go around. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll put out another one shortly.
Thanks, Don. It was good talking with you.